What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Man-Made Thoughts, and I'm back with another graphic novel review. But I'm not gonna do this whole thing all at once because this is a really good story, and I don't want to pretty much waste your time. But basically, if you can find this, go ahead and get it. This is Superman, Lois and Clark. And it's the Road to Rebirth. Dan Jurgens handles the writing, and Lee Weeks handles most of the art, most of it. This is a really good story. I know that like Dan Jurgens, he's one of my favorite writers. Period. He definitely did most of the death of Superman, and he really proves himself. Except he is definitely a 90s style writer. So with that being said, you're gonna see a lot of bad guys talking about bad guy stuff in broad daylight and that sort of thing. But this was really notable because we get introduced to John, who, is Superman's son. This had never been done before. They tried it with Last Son of Krypton with Chris, with Jeff Johns, but John actually became a fan favorite and they actually kept him around. So what you need to know going into this is that this Superman, who looks a lot like Furious Styles from Boys in the Hood, I don't know why. It just every time I look at him, like I just think Furious Styles, who is played by Lawrence Fishburne in Boys in the Hood. But and this is like an example of the anchor going and doing his own thing over pre-established artwork. I'm not really a fan of this composition. This is like a composition of a lot of these DC Rebirth books. But as you'll see, we will get to the actual thing. Once again, I have the UK version because where I get my books from, they just seem to have a lot of UK things. This one came from a library, I think. But so we take a look at the ink work. So right away you can see that the inker actually was doing his own things. I personally like the black and white more than I like the color version, because the inker, or actually like the colors, kind of embellished some things that didn't need to be. Like if you see Superman's, there's just nuts and bolts picking apart stuff. You see Superman's face here, he doesn't look as apish, and you could tell things were moved around in Photoshop because, as you can see, Lois's head is more on his neck than it is right here, which means there was kind of probably a slight digital redraw. Anyway, let's get into it. So I'm going to break this up into three parts. All right, so this first part is Superman from this is the original Golden Age Superman. He appears when the Justice League of the new 52 world, they're fighting against Doomsday, and he appears and he thinks about stepping in because he's like, one, they're too young, they're too immature, and I'm gonna step in. But then Cyborg actually uses one of the mother boxes, and Superman's watching, our Superman, our Clark Kent, and he's back there on a building watching. And he talks about how it took everything in him to not jump in. Very good artwork, very good foreshadowing for a lot of things that's going to happen. And anyway, he gets chased because remember, this world here, they don't trust superheroes. Superheroes haven't really been on the scene for that long. And so you've got one guy wearing Superman and you've got another guy. So he ends up taking off at Mach speed. And they end up going, him and Lois, they end up going and living on a farm that they rent out, and they just pretend to be average people while they hide and take care of John because, if they find out that if anybody found out that Superman has a son, a lot of people are going to come after Lois, which, every time you have on TV shows and everything, people know the future, they try to prevent it, and then things end up happening anyway. So he tells you the origin, and then you get to the DC Convergeance line, where the Convergence was all these other worlds. They were trying to merge them all into getting to the Nu52 because nobody really liked the Nu52 Superman. So they were like, okay, we got to bring back the classic Superman because truth, justice, and the American way. And they ended up pulling it off. But we just get Superman going through life. A lot of this book is jumping backwards and forwards in time, so you get glimpses. This is more like a slice of life and an action story at the same time. It's really good, really, really good. So anyway, we find out that a couple of years have passed. John is probably about 9 or 10 years old, and he's just an average boy. And Superman has been moonlighting. He's been going and saving people just in regular dude clothes. He's trying to be a normal guy, but at the same time, he realizes he has responsibilities. And so John comes in. He asks, hey, where's Dad? And Lois is like, oh, he went out, when the horses got away, Apollo. So when he comes in, he's all wet because he actually was saving a boat during a tsunami, which is extremely manly. And, John's like, why are you wet? And which one of the horses got out? They can't keep up their lie, but, they end up, just telling him another lie because Superman wasn't in on it, that she told him a lie. But anyway, this suit right here is reminiscent of his return suit from regular Superman world, but Lois actually got this suit to make it so that he's kind of like doing Black Ops stuff. So that's why he has this suit. And she's been living a life as Author X. She's exposing Intergang, and now they've got they pretty much got a trap. They sell drugs, they have human trafficking, they, embezzlement schemes, whatever bad guy stuff that there is to get into, they're doing it. And so she's been exposing them and then writing under a synonymous or a pseudonym. And she meets up with her publisher, but random guy on a rooftop. Like I said, this is this is quintessential Dan Jurgens, because Dan Jurgens, he does some really comic booky stuff, but he's so good at doing comic booky stuff that it just works. Nobody questions, is this a comic book or what? But anyway, so Superman goes into space, and he notices that today is the day that Hank Henshaw, who was Cyborg Superman in the Return of Superman arc, he was like, oh man, his ship is coming back today, so what can I do? I'm going to go and avert this crisis by literally going to go save him, because if the accident creates him and turns him into a cyborg again, then I'm going to get murked like I did before. So he don't want to get that smoke. So he decides to go and save the ship. So very manly stuff here. Basically, he's going to do some course correction on the ship and roll it so that the perfect angle of entry, which is actually 40 degrees, fun fact, to not burn up completely in the atmosphere, is 40 degrees. So he tilts the ship just enough so that it'll crash, but it doesn't actually blow up upon impact. So, John's just being a normal kid, using his phone, trying to read a book and all that stuff, do the classic I'm a kid in the 90s thing. That's what kids in the 90s used to do. We read a magazine behind a book, except, like I said, Dan Jurgens, product of the 90s, he writes for that stuff. Anyway, so what we actually get is we get a being. We don't know who she is yet, but she will be revealed as Hiathis, the Grand Panuma, Panera, I don't know, but she is basically a queen of this flower planet, and she wants her Oblivion Stone, and she will kill anybody to get it. And she has some very, very cool dialogue, so I'm going to read this page to you so you understand this. A distant star system. The museum is secured, mistress. It awaits your magnificent presence. You should have fled when you had the chance. Why? It's gone. I'm telling you, gone. Liar. Only a fool would relinquish the Oblivion Stone. Tears of blood! You speak the truth, and I would have used it to stop you if I still had it. I could have saved us. Perhaps. Which is why I will slay any who get in my way, until the stone is mine. So basically she has this psychotic obsession with the stone, and she just works over, fooks over anybody in her path to get this stone. Very cool cover. They're basically trying to show that John's just an average boy. He has a tire iron. Lois has a gun that she's not going to use, but she keeps it for protection because she knows the intergang's actually really, really dangerous. So we get some past stuff about how she decides she wants to write again. John is just a little kid. Superman gets trapped in the core of the earth and somehow breaks out. Then he ends up coming out. After he comes out, there's a guy who is destroying Chicago for no reason at all, named Shockwave. What Superman actually does is takes his armor off, and instead of letting him fall to his death, he breathes a nice puff of air, and he narrowly escapes death. But he ain't gonna be shockwaving anywhere for a long time. So he comes back. I gotta tell you, when I say that things are manly, I don't mean that this is like some kind of gender exclusive type of thing. But Superman is Superman, and manly, part of being manly is taking care of people who cannot defend themselves, taking care of your family, taking care of yourself. This Superman in this story really loves his wife. He really loves his son, and he'll do anything to protect them no matter what. He also still protects regular people because, like I said, in this world, they are after him. Like, they don't understand who he is, and so he's dangerous because they don't understand him. So anyway, he takes Seismic Dude's armor and he puts it in his storage shed because he doesn't have a Fortress of Solitude here yet. So he eventually, invents one. Meanwhile, these dudes, they are investigating the crash that was the Excalibur and how Hank Henshaw was the only survivor and everything. What ends up happening is John gets in trouble at school. He has to go see the principal. He's almost going to get in a fight. His mom has to come and save him. Intergang pulls up on him. And what does Superman do? Take care of his family by beating these dudes down into the ground. Slams one guy's face. Like, at some point you have to ask, is this excessive? Like, when they say Superman doesn't kill, but then, he's doing ridiculous stuff like pushing a man's face into a metal van, or doing the Kakashi Sensei jump under the ground, jump out and pull people in move. I don't actually know what it's called, but it was definitely one of the moves I kept spamming in Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm when it first came to PS3. And he's just doing generally cool things to take care of his family and not be seen. And then, of course, he still has to hide what he was doing, and he's lying to John. So, he's like, hey, what about the guys out there in the road? I know, John. And it's like, hey, how did the car get here? I don't see any tracks. I drove it in. Young grass. It bounces back. And John's just like, oh, well, how did you find us, Dad? And he's like, you're safe. Go home now, and I'll call the police. But Daddy is right, son. It's best that we go. And of course, he tails them, but then he goes and he makes sure that they don't have any kind of recollection. He sweeps through the trucks, everything, just to make sure that they don't have any pictures, no license plates. So basically, they're just acting on a whim. They didn't know who Lois was and all that stuff. But we get little hints that John's powers are starting to develop because he can start to hear them and things like that when they talk about being Superman and that sort of thing. Anyway, this is going to be about the end of part 1. We get another hiatus. It's light years away. I'm going to enjoy reading this page here. The Oblivion Stone. Where is it? Coned warriors are unbreakable. Have it your way. One of their ships departed while the stone was in their possession, mistress. Its destination, the soul system. To be continued. Okay, so Coon Warriors are unbreakable. She snapped his neck. Dan Jurgens, very good at writing bad people doing bad things. But they always get their comeuppance. So this is where I'm going to leave off. This is a really cool cover, even though his suit is inaccurate. Who is this? SS Segovia? Anyway, Segovia does a really good thing, but his black suit's actually inconsistent with the rest of the art. If you actually see it, it doesn't cut that low on his body at all. This should actually still be black up here. But yeah, and also these like little shadow beast things, they don't exist. But this is a really cool cover. You know, it reminds me of like a Joe Mad cover from anything like Battle Chasers, or if you want to amp up the intensity of anything, get a Joe Mad on it, like, and he will make it look cooler than it actually is. But this is the first part. I believe this is the first like 2 issues of this. I will be back with another video talking about the next 2 or 3 issues, because there's a lot. There are a lot in this thing. If you find it, I got it from a place that sells library books that are used. But if you find this, you should definitely keep it, because this is really good. This is a really good book, and I always come back to read it whenever I need some motivation on being cool or thinking about what a good hero would do. I always just turn to Superman, Lois and Clark, because he has some really, really good lines in this book. Really good one-liners that are really tough guy talk. But anyway, we will get to part 2 a little bit later. If you like this video, if you like this comic, we can get more into it. But we're going to just tell you this stuff. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you do subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell notification icon so you get all these videos that I already recorded a long time ago, but for whatever reason, I never decided to put up. But that's why you're getting all these really, really old comics that I just never got around to uploading them due to being in the field or getting ready for deployment. But anyway, let's talk about this. Let's have a good dialogue. This is actually, like I said, even if you don't like superhero comics, this is more like a slice of life featuring Superman. He's got a son, he's got a wife, he's trying to take care of his responsibilities, but he's still trying to be Superman at the same time, even though there's another Superman operating who's like a brat. But anyway, we won't get into that. I will see y'all later. Peace out.